Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's Thursday with AARP Wisconsin. I'm Amber Miller, your host, and this is actually our first live show of the year and also the first live show in a couple weeks. So we just want to wish everybody a happy new year and look forward to bringing you live shows all throughout this whole year. So always make sure to come back here every Thursday from noon to 12:30. So before we get started with today's guest, just as a friendly reminder, you can check out the AARP Wisconsin website should you need information on upcoming events, booster vaccine information, all of that great information that AARP is focusing on, you can find at our website, which is aarp.org/WI. Also, please remember the AARP Community Connections website. There's a few things you can find on here. One is volunteer opportunities within your local community. Otherwise, you can actually create your own volunteer opportunities. So maybe you would be looking to put together like a neighborhood cleanup or something like that. You can actually post it there. And then also there is AARP Friendly Voice Initiative, and that is for people of all ages. You do not need to be an AARP member. But you could put a request in for yourself or for a loved one to receive a phone call from one of our AARP trained volunteers. Because as we know, especially during COVID, it's sometimes just nice to hear a friendly voice on the other end. So you can find additional information at the website below, which is aarpcommunityconnections.org, or by calling 1-888-281-0145. And please remember, it's open to all ages. You do not need to be a member, and it is free. And even though we are living in a virtual world, we are always looking for great AARP Wisconsin volunteers. So if you're interested in volunteering, whether it's for advocacy or outreach or many other options, you can find additional information at the website below, which is aarp.org/I-want2 volunteer. There's information on there about current opportunities, and then you can also apply online, and one of our staff members will get back to you. You can find the information once again at the website below or the AARP Wisconsin website. So, of course, our second week of every month, we love to focus on advocacy. So we're really excited to have Helen Mark-Sticks from the AARP Wisconsin advocacy team with us today. Hi, Helen.
Hi, Amber.
Hi, good to see you. And also, if you are watching this live, we will be taking questions. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask Helen, you could please post them below on the facebook.com page or our YouTube page. And if you are watching this in replay and still have a question, still please post it, and we will ensure that we get that answered for you. So Helen, I know you have been on renewal, which is something that AARP employees can do, but we always know that you still are always focusing on advocacy. You live it, you breathe it, you probably dream about it. So we're always excited to have you on the show. And I know today we're going to talk a little bit about legislators and kind of like what's kind of brewing for Wisconsin. So we know that Wisconsin has a full-time legislator, but this is an election year also, which is always a busy time for AARP. So what does that mean in terms of the legislator meeting and also passing bills?
Well, we're an unusual state in that we do have a full-time legislature. So the way the legislature works is most of their business is conducted on session days, and they lay out their session plans. They can't have session and run elections at the same time. So the way the schedule is this year, they'll be having session days from the 18th of January to the 27th, and again in February from the 15th to the 24th. And there's a session scheduled for March from the 8th to the 10th. And then the legislature regular sessions will end. That's not what's going to happen. In prior years, what's happened is the legislature has ended early. In 2020, it ended on February 20th. And that's to give the incumbents and the people who are running for office a chance to run for office. Does that mean the legislative office is shut down? No. It means the staff is going to still be there. Staff can't be involved in elections, even if the elected official is involved in elections. And the legislature keeps functioning through something they called study groups. They set up study groups. You have at least 16 of the senators that aren't running for reelection. And you have citizens and elected officials that are put together for study groups, and they spend the summer working on proposed legislation for the next session. So they don't just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does this mean we're not going to have another session? No. The governor can always call what's called a special session, and the legislators themselves can call themselves into session, such as what was done 2 years ago in November after the elections, and what's now called the lame duck session. That was called by the legislature themselves. So if something needs doing, it can get done. But for the most part, the end of February, the end of March at the latest, they'll be off starting election season.
That's a lot. That is a lot to take in, Helen.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Nope. I just want to make sure that people know that they could probably find this information. I know we'll talk about a website. So if you are like, what were those dates again? We'll make sure that we post them at least on our website. And Helen, I know people are thinking right now, like, how is AARP like involved with this? So does AARP Wisconsin have any bills that they hope to get passed before March 1st?
Well, we do have a couple of bills. There's part of the elder abuse package that has passed the Senate, but has not been voted on in the Assembly floor session yet. So we're hoping that that moves forward. And we also have been supporting a piece of legislation about advanced nurse practice, which would get more nurse practitioners to be able to function more independently and improve access to healthcare. So those are the bills we're watching. Most of the bills, I'm going to guess, in the next 2 months are going to be what I call campaign bills.
Mm-hmm.
People set them up so that they have something to say. They tried to advance this, but the governor blocked it, or they tried to advance this, but the majority party blocked it. So there'll be a certain amount of game playing going on for the next 2 months. And then we go into what everybody calls the silly season, which is elections. But advocacy and our issues play an important part of elections. And this is going to be an unusual year because we're seeing a lot of legislators that aren't running for re-election. So we'll have a whole new crop of people to educate both on our issues and on the value of older people.
And Helen, if people are, maybe they don't know quite yet, if somebody's running or not running, is there a website, whether it's an AARP website or a state of Wisconsin website, that you would recommend them going to?
Yeah, there is. At this particular point, none of us know who's running or not running. The timetable is that they start circulating nomination papers, because in order to get on the ballot, you need so many people from your district to sign the nomination papers. So people have to start circulating towards the middle of April, and then June 1st, they turn them in, and they have to have a certain number of valid signatures. That's when the Wisconsin Elections Board will post who the candidates are, and whether you have primaries or not, and whether you have an opponent or not. We start really seeing how things are shaping up about 10 days before that June 1st date, because candidates, incumbents that aren't running again, have to notify the public. So you can't just sneak up and turn it over to your best friend who was the only person who knew you weren't running. So it will really firm up who the candidates are. And then that's all posted on a website, and the information will come available. The primaries will end up being in the middle of August. And then the general election, of course, is in November. I love election season because that's when the candidates, They may not have listened to you for 2 years. They may not know your name, but now they need your vote. And although they really do listen to their donors and they need the money for TV ads and mailings and stuff, that doesn't make any difference if they don't make the votes. So it's a wonderful time to do advocacy and to educate. So we will make sure there's a link on our website to the elections boards and the listing of candidates. And we will even put out suggestions of things you might like to ask the candidates. And so that our advocacy work just blends in from the legislative sessions into the elections. Now, because of the way our ethics laws are, you can't be raising money when the legislature's in session. So if there's a special session or an election, an extraordinary session called during that time, all the fundraisers have to be canceled and the money coming in has to be returned on those dates and stuff. So they really try not to be in session during the election season.
And Helen, we're going to get to a question from Jim. And Jim is asking, can you give us examples of some of the activities AARP volunteers might be asked to do during the election season? Which is great for if somebody's watching this thinking that they may want to volunteer, especially with this being an election year.
Well, we're going to do a whole bunch of things. One of them is it's good to establish, it's a time to establish a relationship with the candidates or the elected official, at least they get elected. And so we're going to be doing some regular emailing and tweeting and Facebook where we introduce ourselves personally, but then we go ahead and introduce our issues. And our issues are the familiar issues. It's, supportive caregiving, lower prescription drugs, access to health care, access to retirement security plans. We're going to keep on our issues. We're also going to run a parallel campaign, which I think is very important. Everybody knows that older people vote, but they don't really value older people in our society. So we're going to let each of our candidates know how many older people they have in their district, how much money Medicare brings in, how much money Social Security brings in, where all the senior centers and activities are, so they could reach out to older people. And I think it's really an opportunity, regardless of your position on issues, to remind the politicians that we're important and we're important parts of the community and we're important parts of civil engagement. And there's this kind of come out, pat us on the head, nice people, older people vote, and then they disappear and don't listen to us. So we're going to have this campaign where we establish relationships, tell them about our importance, tell them about our issues. You can do it by phone, you can do it by text, you can do it by email, and we will provide talking points and handouts.
Great.
And, we'll have, if we're back to the stage where we can do in-person meetings, then we're going to want people to go to those candidate meetings, not the fundraisers. We never raise money. We never endorse candidates, but we can help you go to events where you have questions to ask and a little background so that you can make sure our issues play a part in the campaign. And I have to tell you, election work is fun because you meet people, you learn things about the candidates, and if they win, it will be really nice to be able to call up and either know the staff because you met them through campaigning or know the elected official, or at least know that they understand our issues. And of course, we're always looking for champions. So if you find somebody who responds well to our issues, we'll even cultivate them further to make sure when they get elected, they continue to be champions.
Absolutely. And thank you, Jim, for that question. And you can find volunteer opportunities once again on our website. So Helen, back to the legislation. So So the legislative session adjourns. Does that mean there's no more sessions?
Well, that means that any bill that was introduced during the session as a regular session bill dies.
Hmm.
If
Great.
it wants to move forward, it can, but it would have to be reintroduced either in a special session or an extraordinary session, which I don't think we're going to have. We usually don't. Or then it can be introduced next year in the next 2-year session. But bills actually die at the end of session. If you don't get it through both houses in an identical form, then the issue is dead for this year. And that's why, you've often received like the caregiver tax credit.
Yeah.
We've sent out letters asking people to support that third session in a row. Every time it has a different number on it. And that's because it has to be reintroduced. It has to start the process all over again.
And Helen, does the legislators plan on doing any work over the summer?
Well, the summer is mostly those study groups I talked about before. And they do constituent work. I mean, one thing you should never underestimate is the value of calling your legislative office if you're having trouble with any kind of program or any kind of complaint and you don't know where to complain to. And so the staff is there. They're still responding to constituent concerns. They're still following up on issues that were raised. Now, if you call a legislative office in the middle of a campaign and you ask a campaign question, they're going to tell you, no, I can't talk elections or campaign stuff. And no, I can't tell you where that meeting is. They'll just give you the phone number for the campaign.
Okay.
So, but the staff will be there. The legislators will still, be doing either study groups or looking at things that they're interested for next year. But mostly people running for re-election are going to want to be out and contacting with their constituents. We're still waiting to know who the constituents are because we're still waiting on the redistricting lines.
Yeah.
And so, this is a year where we're going in with still a lot of uncertainty, but we'll get there. By June 1st, someone will blow the whistle. We'll know who the candidates are. We'll know what the lines are. We'll move forward with the elections.
And Helen, not to put you on the spot for this, but you talked about just right now redistricting, and people might not know a lot about that. So if maybe you could give like a 30-second overview of what that means, which is probably going to be a little difficult. And then maybe if people are looking for more information, where would be a good place for them to read more about that?
Well, this is where we are on redistricting. What happens is every 10 years, we do a census in this country. And as a result of the census, we try to set up a system where each person's vote is equal to everyone else's vote. So it's one man, one vote, or one person, one vote. Mm-hmm. And so what redistricting is in every 10 years is they draw the district lines of who votes for what office and trying to balance out who votes for whom. Mm-hmm. Now that sounds very simple. It is not, because everyone wants to draw the lines that favors them the best. And so here in Wisconsin, we have multiple court cases going, and we have multiple proposed maps. And as you know, the probability of the legislature and the governor's office agreeing on something on this are very slight. So we're waiting for the courts, and there's both federal court action and state court action. How do you keep up with this? I have trouble keeping up with this. But eventually, there's a lot of different organizations. I always send people, or I often send people, if it isn't something we're posting, I often send people to the League of Women Voters. Because they are very good about being nonpartisan and objective. And so there's a place to go. And just read the newspapers to the extent you can. There's a lot in it about redistricting.
Great. And that's good for anybody of any age, especially like first time voters. Would love to try to get them connected with this video too, just so they kind of know what's going on. So if I want to influence the legislation and they are not in session, what can I do to be a good advocate?
Well, the big part is you have to remember people run for office from all walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have no idea what your life is like. And they have no idea necessarily about how government works. So often the first step is education. So if you have, pardon me, if you have an issue or an educational piece, keep it simple. Start and just do a brief summary of what your issue is. See if you can get them interested. I always like to do things in writing because if you can send them a brief 2 or 3 paragraph overview, and remember, you have to tell them what's the problem. You have to tell them why they should care. You have to tell them how it affects your district and why, it affects them that way. And you have to tell them what you want them to do about it. Mm-hmm. You can't say, I'm Chicken Little and the sky is falling in, without saying, and to stop the sky from falling, we should build scaffolds.
Yeah.
And if they write back and say, where is the sky falling in? And you say it's falling in Appleton, and this person is running in Green Bay, they're probably not going to care that Chicken Little thinks the sky is falling in. But if it's falling in Green Bay and they're running in Green Bay and you can tell them where it is, then you got them interested and you start giving them more information.
And I think, Helen, that's a great piece to mention, that a lot of people want to be heard. We hear that all the time. We hear it, people calling AARP or posting it on our Facebook or messaging us through social media. And this is like a prime example of what you gave of like something that you can do to ensure that your voice is being heard, but making sure that it's like clear and concise and that they kind of get what you're saying instead of going, back and forth and saying, what city is it? And I'm not part of that city. So I think that's really great information to give to our viewers.
Well, the other thing to remember is I used to work up in the state Senate, mm-hmm. and I remember a woman giving me immense amounts of information.
Yeah.
And then I asked her what she wanted the senator to do. And she said to me, oh, the senator's a smart woman. She'll figure it out.
Well, need a little more information. Yeah. Yes.
Part of advocacy is showing that the problem can be solved or at least improved and what steps you actually want people. And if you ask people, they can say yes or no.
Yeah.
Because if you just leave it out there, please do something about it. People can do something about it by just, throwing the piece of paper in the circular file. That's not what you want them to do. You have to make the ask. And that's hard for people.
Yeah.
Because, and can I suggest you ask politely?
That helps.
Because there's a great deal to be said for good manners in establishing relationships. Because if you spend half your advocacy time telling a person they're a blithering idiot, why would they turn around and do anything for you?
Yeah.
So good manners helps. And being consistent helps.
And Helen, my last question for you is, our viewers are taking all this really great information in, and it seems like a lot's coming up in the next couple months, which I know the advocacy team will do an amazing job getting this information out. But how can people keep up to date on what's going on? This is a really busy year.
Well, this is a really busy year. I would love you to watch our website. I will be putting as much information on. I think you could start with the basics right now. If you're interested in any of the bills or that information, that's on the website. You can go ahead and look at getting in touch with your legislators saying you want those bills passed. But with the election stuff, let's start with the most basic. Are you registered? And you have to renew your request for an absentee ballot regularly. If you have a picture ID on file, you don't have to submit another one. But if you're hoping to vote, like Amber, if you were thinking of voting in the election coming up for mayor in Milwaukee, and you were concerned that you didn't want to go out because of COVID, you can go on My Vote. Go ahead and make sure to request an absent. Make sure your registration's up to date. If you've moved or changed anything, get it up to date, and then request your absentee ballot. You can say, oh, I want to vote absentee in this election that's coming up, but in the fall, I'm going to march there in person because it's going to be all over by then and we're going to be going out. That's fine. You can ask for just the spring election. And if things are bad, you can go back and ask again at the end of the year. But, you should start with the basics. And then you just have to keep track. We will do our best. There'll be many groups out there working on elections. There'll be people working on candidates. We're talking about trying to get some way to help people evaluate how to read some of the information you get, because, you want more than a brochure saying, vote for me because my opponent is the devil.
Correct. Yeah.
There aren't that many devils running for office. And so that is not a good slogan. You should make sure the candidates tell you what they're going to do and where they stand on the issue. And if they don't, call them on it. Say, what are you going to do for me?
Absolutely. It's that voice being heard. And Helen, we're getting to the end of the show, but it's always a joy to have you on. And we definitely, this is not the last time you'll hear about advocacy work in the state of Wisconsin for our viewers. So definitely make sure to check back on that website. And thank you so much, Helen, for joining us today. We appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And as always, we like to plug some upcoming events that might be of interest to you. And please keep in mind, these are virtual. January 18th, New Year, Greener You. There's also a lecture coming up on what's so great about Rome. January 20th, so the top 5 scams, what they have in common and how you can avoid them. And then also, if this year is something maybe you want to devote time to your career, AARP Online Career Summit, which is New Year, New Opportunities. All these are free. You can go to the website below to register or call the phone number below. This year, we are continuing doing Small Dollar, Big Impact, which is a grant that is awarded monthly to nonprofits, municipalities, and similar if you're looking to do something really creative and innovative to impact your community. The next application is due January 18th. You could go to the website below. That website is also something you could check back every month. It's updated with the new application date. There's also information about former winners. So once again, you can go to aarp.org/WI and then SDBI. For next week's guest, we're excited to have one of our associates from the AARP National Office. She's going to be talking about staying competitive in the job market. So once again, if 2022 was going to be your year, maybe to make a career move, you'll get some valuable information on how to do that, and also some research and information that will be of interest to you. So you come back here next Thursday from noon to 12:30 Central Time. And we always appreciate you being here live. If you are watching this in replay, feel free to share this on your Facebook or YouTube page. So we look forward to seeing you next week, Thursday. And until then, be safe.